Is that coming up now?
Yes.
It is?
Yes.
All right. Okay. This diagram shows you how people in Canberra travel. There's a lot of travel in driver-only cars, which is pretty high greenhouse emissions. A lot of travel in multi-occupant cars, which is much smaller emissions per person. And about 1/8 of our travel is on public transport, which is higher emissions than multi-occupant cars. Now, the ACT government has produced some pretty good arguments for bus rapid transit. From an economic point of view, the two main criteria are the net benefit and the benefit to cost ratio. And you can see that for stage one of rapid transit, which they've already built, they could have had a net benefit of $243 million and a benefit to cost ratio of 1.98 if they built bus rapid transit. This is according to their own estimate. Instead, they built light rail and they're getting a net benefit. For stage two of light rail, you take into account the dubious wider economic benefits. Your light rail are a lot less than the cost of it. And the benefit to cost ratio is well below 1, where 1 is the normal cutoff, and anything less than 1 is really not worth doing. If you take into account the wider economic benefits, then stage 2 sort of will produce a net benefit, unless it costs too much to convert to wire-free. But the net benefit for the other options goes up proportionally anyway. So I don't know why they're building stage 2. And now here's the impact of bus rapid transit or light rail on the amount of car travel that we do. The solid blue line is business as usual. This is for stage 1, Gungahlin to Civic, and this is the government estimates. The dotted red line is bus rapid transit, and the dotted or the dashed green line is light rail. You can see that it makes a pretty small difference to the total amount of car travel in Canberra. Light rail is very slightly better in that respect at twice the cost. Now, I've estimated some emissions reductions. If we built stage 1 of bus rapid transit, then in 2031 we would be saving 3.7 thousand tonnes of carbon dioxide emissions per year. With light rail, it would be 3.9. That's emissions from car travel. If we convert our public transport to zero emissions, we'll be saving 34,000 tonnes per year. And that is only 1/3 of 1% of our carbon footprint. Another factor that I'm not sure has been adequately addressed is the travel times for stage 2 of light rail and the impact that's going to have on patronage. Light rail is going to be 10 minutes, well, probably more than 10 minutes longer between Woden and Civic than our current buses are, and that is going to reduce patronage possibly by 10 or 20% compared with what it would be otherwise with light rail. Now, stage 1 did have a very positive impact on patronage, and so this would mean that stage 2 would have a smaller positive impact on public transport patronage. It's really difficult to make a good estimate of what the final figure would be. Now, the ACT government back in 2004, they set targets to increase the proportion of commuters who travel on foot, by bicycle and by public transport. And from this graph, you can see that those three things all have increased between 2001 and 2021. But the other thing that's happened, if you look at the top of the graph, is that the proportion of people travelling as car passengers has shrunk. And the end result is that the proportion of people travelling as car drivers has gone up. So to put it in briefly, those extra cyclists, pedestrians and public transport users are mostly people who would otherwise have travelled as car passengers and wouldn't have been contributing to greenhouse emissions or to traffic congestion. So we need to focus more, if we want to reduce greenhouse emissions and reduce traffic congestion, we need to focus more on getting people into car passengers, out of car driver seats and into car passenger seats. Now, one way of doing that is with transit lanes. There's some of the numbers from the previous graph. A transit lane is just really an ordinary traffic lane with a different sign on it. So it doesn't cost much to convert an existing lane of traffic to a transit lane. It reduces transit commute times for both passengers and for car passengers. And it encourages car drivers to become car passengers. You can also build extra lanes and call them transit lanes. And the worst case is that a transit lane will cost as much as a busway, but we'll get more people using it. And here's a little case study. You can see that little bus lane on the left of this diagram that just bypasses the giveaway sign where Melrose Drive meets the traffic coming from Yamba Drive. That's a bus lane at the moment. Now, if that's converted to a T3 lane, as a bus lane, you get 2,400 people using it in the morning based on the transit lane warrant study, which is a bit old. But the numbers haven't changed much since 2012 because we've had a general increase in traffic followed by COVID, which caused a general decrease in traffic. So what will happen is that if you convert that bus lane to a T3 lane where cars with at least 3 occupants can use it, as well as motorcycles and taxis and buses, you get 256 people who can get through that intersection more quickly in cars with 3 or more people. And there are 75 fewer cars in the general traffic lanes, so the rest of the traffic can get through more quickly too. Now, you're well within the capacity of that lane when you've got, what was it, that number of vehicles, what, 52, no, it's about 300 or so vehicles, where the lane can carry 500 buses or 1,000 cars. So as a T3 lane, that would work. As a T2 lane, there would simply be too many people able to use it, and so it would just get as congested as anywhere else. And so we could say, let's have transit lanes on all our major routes in Canberra. I reckon that would cost about $50 million, and a lot of that cost would be getting the transport analysts to work out how to do it. And it would not solve all our problems, but it would certainly help. And you could put in off-road bike paths along the same routes if you wanted to. Here's my summary of greenhouse emissions per person for a typical public transport journey. The lowest, believe it or not, is a car with a driver and passenger. And that's about 1.5 kilograms of CO2e per person. In the June quarter of 2020, which was before COVID and after light rail was introduced, the public transport emissions got down to below 2 kilograms per person per trip. The average car is a bit above 2 kilograms per person per trip. Before we had light rail, bus travel was causing more emissions than car travel. and a car with the driver only was the highest. But with the huge drop in patronage during COVID, the emissions per trip for public transport went way up to almost 6 kilograms per person. That's on the way back down again now that the public transport patronage is recovering. But this shows you really how important it is to get more people in the cars. Same number, or not so many cars, more people per car. And that's basically my argument. So if you've got any questions.
Thanks, Leon. Can you stop sharing so that we can see each other?
How do I do that? Stop sharing.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Ernestine.
Thanks for that, Leon. I guess my first thing is, have you taken into account the fact that electric buses are replacing diesel buses? And then my second point is parking. If I park at work, it costs me $18 a day, times $18 times 5. If I cycle, it costs me $0. And if I get the bus, it costs me $6 a day. So increasing the number of cars versus public transport means you need parking spaces. And there is a hideous new car park has been built, a multi-story car park right next to the Heritage Building where DEQ is, the Department of Environment, just so more people can park, and that kind of thing concerns me. So yes, that's just my 2 comments.
Well, addressing the second issue first, if we build transit lanes, we'll have more people travelling by car, but in fewer cars.
But that still requires parking versus public transport.
It requires less parking than we're using the way we do things now.
Yeah, oh, I agree. I just personally would push for public transport, so no one needs to park. But anyway, that's just my view.
Now, I have got some slides that compare. I did actually compare the. Did I compare the emissions reductions of electrifying the whole bus fleet? I think I did.
Because that's to move to electric buses.
Pardon me?
The fleet will be replaced with buses.
Yeah, if we go to fully electric public transport, whether it's trams or buses, at the moment we're causing about 34,000 tonnes of greenhouse emissions coming out of the exhaust pipes of our buses. So that will be eliminated. And the impact of one stage of light rail or bus rapid transit on car emissions is about 4,000 tonnes of emissions. So converting to a fully electric public transport fleet will save a lot more emissions than any individual light rail or bus route or bus rapid transit route.
Bruce.
Thanks for that presentation, Leon. One or sort of two questions, I suppose, or a comment and a question. The comment is, I can see that the multi-car occupant thing is, quite efficient, but from a perspective of actually trying to do such a thing, it just sounds like an enormous pain in the neck trying to actually coordinate with other people to get to the same destination. I'd almost prefer to be stuck in traffic, listening to some music than have to, do the whole sort of, coordination with other people. That's more a comment than anything. The second question is just a procedural one, really, which is, have you actually, sent correspondence into ACT government on this with these sorts of points, and have they actually properly responded, properly sort of said whether they agree or don't agree, or which points of the analysis they agree and don't agree with?
All right, on the first point, until 2011 census, and including that census, more people chose to travel as car passengers in Canberra for commuting than to travel as public transport passengers. And I don't think that was strangers at all. Probably not even work colleagues. It was probably husbands and wives and family members who happened to sort of live and work in places that were fairly close together. And there have been a whole lot of, well, I remember in the greenhouse office about the year 2000, we had companies coming to us with saying, we've got this car sharing software, it's going to do wonderful things. You know, we'll get more people per car. And we ended up with Uber. As far as government interest, I don't think there's been any interest at all from the ACT government. But our new senator, what's his name, his office is fairly interested and has raised the idea of transit lanes as an option. And I also noticed that after years of me promoting this thing, the Greens and the Belconnen Community Council, promoting bus rapid transit over light rail, the Greens and the Belconnen Community Council and even the Public Transport Association of Canberra have come out in favour of a busway between Belconnen and Civic. So the message has got through to even PTCBR.
Okay.
Thanks.
Can I make some how would you call that? Comments on this. I think this joint is going to be pushed to nearly 1 million people in Canberra. What you see here is Canberra, currently at about 570,000 people, projected if you include Queanbeyan. And this is my home city, Munich. 1.5 plus maybe 200 in the wider surround. They're comparable, and that's the same scale. Now, if you look at public transport, then you see this. We have a bus network and one line of light rail. That's it. Munich has a fast rail network. It has a tube. It has a bus network, and it has a tram network. And it is connected to the wider environment by trains, local trains, and high-speed trains to the rest of Europe. And this is being paid for half by the federal government, half by Bavaria, that would be here, New South Wales. And this is the contribution by the city. So, are Bavarians silly? Or have they prepared for what's coming towards Canberra? If we wreck the joint with 1 million people, we better start now to have a proper mass transport system, and your transit lanes are just fiddling at the edges.
Transit lanes may be fiddling at the edges, but if you look at the impact of light rail stage 1 on total car use in Canberra, that's just fiddling at the edges too.
No, what I'm arguing is we need a comprehensive, all-encompassing underground mass transport system in Canberra. And if you tell me about that this costs too much, then I need 2 nuclear power submarines.
Well, I think that the best way to get a rapid public transport network in Canberra would, well, if we do it with bus rapid transit, we can get it established for less than half the cost of light rail.
Have you,
and
Leon, have you ever pushed a tram into a fucking bus? It's
my
a joke.
wife has. you can design buses. They have buses that they call what are they called? The articulated ones that pretend to be trams, and they can design them. If they design the platforms well enough and design the buses well enough, you should be able to get easily from the platform onto the bus. They have kneeling buses that are supposed to be able to do that, but there's a bus stop near the old bus depot markets that is wheelchair accessible, except that when you want to get from the bus stop to the footpath, you've got 3 steps to go up and down. And that is the sort of thing you can fix easily. Trackless trams, that's what I was trying to think of.
Learn from
yeah. But part of the problem is that Canberra was designed as a compact city. And then the planners came up with this Y plan in the 70s, which put Tuggeranong a ridiculous distance from everywhere else. And then we built Gungahlin at a time when it didn't seem like such a bad idea, except that the people who owned the airport discovered that they could turn that into an office development. So all the office jobs that should have happened in Gungahlin went to the airport. And so then we had to build the Majura Parkway. And so we have large distances to travel, much larger than they need to be, for what is really a relatively small population, which you could fit the whole of the Canberra population in the middle of Munich.
Well,
Okay,
we're
I'm going to
trying
talk.
to get close to Munich.
I'm going to talk now.
Jeff,
Right.
your turn.
More than 20 years ago, we lived in Northern Virginia, working in the southern side of Washington, D.C. They had HOV vehicles, which are high occupancy vehicles. 3 or more people could travel, and they get a free car park at the end. So wherever it was in Washington, D.C. or southern part of, they could park their car for free. And it really worked. And not more than 3 people were traveling on. Sometimes there were mini commuter buses with 6 or 7 people in there, and they would swap drivers from one week to the other, so the driving effect didn't wear everyone down. And it worked very, very well. So we could look at what they did in Washington or Northern Virginia and implement that here.
Well, we actually had 3 for free parking in Canberra. We probably still have some. At the 2016 census, we registered the highest ever proportion of car driving commuters, and the government closed down some of its 3 for 3 parking spots.
Anyway, I'm just saying it worked.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah.
Ramon.
Yeah, I thought I'd just make the comment that Munich and probably a lot of other European cities, one feature that they have that Canberra doesn't have is that they're probably a lot more dense. In Canberra, where we have a lot of single-family homes, probably in Munich, you see a lot of row houses and things of the like. And I think if we want to be a city that can sustain 1 million people, we've got to accept that we need more density in order to grow.
Sure.
Yeah.
And you need
in
public transport system.
Well, I grew up in Colac in Western Victoria, where we had a population of 10,000 people, and we had everything that you would need for most of the time available within that city. And you might go to Geelong or somewhere once a year. Now, if you go to Copenhagen, within walking distance of the average bus stop, you've got 10,000 people, which means that there's a very good chance that in the time it would take you to get to the bus stop, you can do your shopping or whatever else it is you need to do. In Canberra, we have 1,000 people within walking distance of the average bus stop, which means that you've got 1/10 as many potential users for that bus per bus stop. And that's where putting density, sensible density, can make a big difference.
Benjamin. Who are you?
You guys able to hear me?
Yeah, barely.
Barely. Okay. I'll try to talk a bit louder. I'm actually from Elizabeth Lee's office, so the local MLA for Kurrajong. Leon, if you haven't already, it'd be nice if you could pass your ideas and slideshow either onto our office or Mark Parton, so the Shadow Minister for Transport, just to have a look and possibly get back to you about your ideas.
Okay, what was your name again?
My name is Ben.
Ben. Yep, I've sort of been in touch with Mark from time to time. Okay.
Thanks heaps, Ben.
All right, I can do that.
Thanks, Leon. That seems like a good outcome.
Okay.
Ian.
Thanks, Jacob. Leon, in the your pie chart, the first chart,
Yep.
the number of people who were travelling by different modes, it didn't seem to add up to 100%. It looked like it added up to 50% or something like that. So, what proportion of people travel by car?
Now, the first slide wasn't in percentages. It was kilometres travelled.
Right. What proportion
so
of people? Yeah. What's the proportion for
There's
car
about
versus?
40% of travel is done by people by themselves in cars.
Yeah.
Another approximately 40% is done by people travelling together in cars, and about 8%, about 5% is done by public transport, and about half as much of that by distance is done by walking and cycling.
Yeah, so I just want to, one thing I find with a lot of this analysis and basically the attack on cars is a bit of a lack of understanding of reality, just a reality check that the vast majority of people, for reasons probably to do with convenience and, accessibility, choose the car. Yet we spend a lot of our time railing about everyone riding their bikes and walking. Active travel and being active is a fantastic thing, but the reality is that people have chosen to use their car, and that Canberra is designed for the car. And I'm thinking that, well, if we're all having to convert to electric vehicles by 2030, what's the problem?
Then you are in the rush hour traffic jam electrically.
Well, what if you're Jakob, what if you're working from home? What if things do change over the next 10, 15 years, that the spatial requirement of how we live is different? I just find this whole, love affair with the old cities of Europe who weren't designed for the car, and they become congested, and there's cars all over the footpaths and motorbikes and all sorts of stuff parked all over the footpaths when you walk through these cities, and we want our city to look like that. It just doesn't seem to make sense to me. Seriously, just from reality.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we just seem to be sort of confronting a reality from last century, and trying to introduce something else that it's not going to happen.
Well, you're basically walking back into the 19th century if you want.
That's just a comment. That's just I just think that
over the next century, the population of Canberra is going to double, or possibly more than that. We've got to find a place for all these people to live.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable, but having to mimic a European city, I just don't see that it's an easy story, but why wouldn't you just replicate Tokyo or replicate New York or something like that, where there's a lot of people and it's not, it doesn't recognise the impact of climate at all. It's not the climate issue is not considered. Just by saying we want a lot of the missing middle put in there, and that's going to somehow resolve the problem of population. Well, great, but it's not going to. It doesn't address the whole idea of carbon neutrality or climate resilience. And I just think we're really looking at a funny and weird thing. And I think during the week when all the planning documentation came out, and especially the mapping, and the mapping, particularly it was in the Canberra Times, that showed how many of the RZ1s could actually be converted to dual occupancy. It was remarkable how many had already been converted to dual occupancy, and also the ones that weren't suitable for conversion to dual occupancy. So I just found that there was a lot of, and then we had
we are now on a different.
No, but it's a similar thing to, it's a reality check about what is really, what is the reality that's going on, and how do you address it? And I think just these, grasps in the dark as something like increased density for missing middle without some really heavy design controls will just miss the point and miss the target completely. And I think that's where we're heading. And you look at the new planning docs, there's nothing about, there's hardly anything about carbon neutrality or climate resilience in the new housing. It's
There's no planning anyway.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. I just think
Bruce.
that, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I'd say, Ian, that, yeah, putting that aside, we will end up with much greater density one way or another from a combination of, rezoning and infill and so on. So we will need a souped up public transport system, I would have thought. And I suppose just experientially, every time I'm on the tram to Gungahlin, like it's always really busy, and it's so easy, so convenient. It just, I agree with Jochen. It just seems like the future. It seems like a modern, convenient, fast transport system. And it's hard to believe that we wouldn't want that actually going right across the city. And yes, it's expensive, but it's a kind of hump. And once it's done, once the infrastructure is in there, then it'll actually be a tremendous asset for the city that's just going to grow hugely in population one way or another.
Ernest.